Is it alright if I join in? If you want to, I don't see a problem. I won't prevent anyone from entering. We'll win against all hindrances and make everyone celebrate our union. Of course, it's the same the other way around. If you succeed in love by defeating us at our best, then both Shannon and I promise to sincerely support the pair that wins. Right, Shannon? Yes, we will not lose. And even if we did, we will cheer you on from the bottom of our hearts. I feel the same. I will not lose. Well, if there's no way out of this fight, let's show them what we've got. Neither I nor Kankun have any intention of losing without a fight. Vai, Jessica, tira fuori i tirapugni. You feel the same, I assume. Yes. If there is even a small chance that Father, no, that Butler's son will acknowledge me, I'm willing to put myself on the line. Well said. Good going, little sister. The actors have gathered. Then, let's begin, Furfur. Mi fa troppo morire come dicono Furfur. Vabbè, then let's begin, Furfur. Yes, let us begin, Zepar. Let's begin this trial of lovers, the fight over a single miracle of magic. Ok, potevo leggere 2 minuti in più e chiudevamo il capitolo, ma vabbè. Self-reliance, titolo di questo nuovo capitolo. Erika returned to the room that had been given to her on the second floor of the guest house. The next room over was empty. It was very quiet there. Even pressuring her against the wall wouldn't enable her to listen on the voices in the cousin's room. Bravo Butler. Even with hearing power boosted by the detective's authority, it would probably be impossible to make out anything. This room was the farthest down the hall, a long ways away from the cousin's room. Last time my room was right next to this. I see. So he placed my room farther away this time. The powers of authority given by the Game Master permit this level of modification to the initial arrangement. It is perhaps a quite reasonable first move. Well, that suits me too. I have no desire to listen to those brats' squeaky voices as they play cards. This whole time Erika had been sitting at the desk working at something. She was preparing some of those duct tape seals from before. She had asked Kumasawa for the stickiest tape available. She drew a complicated, unforgeable signature on it with a permanent marker, then added slits through it. By sticking this over a place that she wanted to prove had remained closed, she could create a powerful seal equal in strength to the red roof. Those menacing seals had cornered Natsui so thoroughly in the previous game. Attenzione, lo sprite di lei con il... Lo sprite di lei con il nastro adesivo. Ok. Cos'è che diceva? Great. Is something wrong? He got me. That butler doesn't let anything get by him, does he? Erika shrugged and showed a piece of duct tape she had cut off to Dlanor. By sight alone, Dlanor couldn't tell what had annoyed Erika. However, as soon as she held the tape, she realized the difference right away. This won't be any good. Yes, it's barely sticky at all. This won't even reach close to the red roof. Even duct tape can be of low quality and it sometimes gets weaker with age. The tape Kumasawa had found was a bit too weak even for normal use. It wasn't nearly sticky enough to be used as a detective seal. It is possible to tear it off cleanly. This cannot serve as proof of a seal. I guess Butler isn't as totally incompetent as I thought. He probably tampered with all the duct tape on this island using the authority of the game master. Letting Erika get her hands on duct tape gave her a fatal weapon to use against witches. The previous game had proven this fact, and so Butler had removed that weapon from the entire mansion. Most likely, all possible substitutes for duct tape have also been tampered with. Probably. Well, it really isn't so bad. At least this way, I don't have to look like a fool crawling all over the outer wall in the cold rain. Erika tossed the duct tape aside and flopped spear-eagled into the bed. Well, detectives do have a penchant for puffing on a pipe while waiting calmly for a crime to occur. I doubt there'll be any part for you to play until the first twilight begins. So why not finish off somewhere and take a smoking break? I imagine that looking at my face will do nothing more than tire you out. I do not smoke. I am just a kid. Oh, really? I wish I could. Well, only if it really is as refreshing as smokers claim. It seems that you are not in high spirits. Does it look that way? Erika answered lazily, still looking up at the ceiling. That in itself was half an answer. The silence between the two was filled by the sound of the wind and rain. It was so quiet that it was hard not to listen to the ticking of the clock. È vero. Lady Erika, may I ask a question? Depends on what it is. Answer's probably no, though. Well, we're just killing time anyway. Why is it? Erika was probably bored as well. Or maybe the sound of the rain was making her sentimental. She assented, which was very unlike her. Why is it that you hate magic? Oh, you mean the thing downstairs with Maria? That was nothing more than a foolish trick to deceive children. Everyone knew that. Was it really necessary to go so far to destroy that illusion? I cannot understand. It had been a childish fight. Erika didn't need Lanor to tell her that. Ciao, Luke! Well, I am a self-proclaimed intellectual erre. I can't stand having magic confuse the truth. And so you feel pleasure from exposing that. I sense a different emotion. Different emotion? What's that? To me, it feels less like pleasure and more like a different, negative emotion. You really are a murder doll, aren't you? Even your eyes are like knotholes. My apologies. Please forgive me. Erika rolled over grumpily, turning her back to Lanor. Because of this, the Lanor couldn't see her expression. Even so, for some reason, she could guess that this completely unobserved expression was one of pain. Interpreting this to mean that Erika wanted her to go away, Lanor gave a bow and made to leave. Then, Erika suddenly spoke. The words came so far out of the blue that Lanor doubted her ears, and she had to ask Erika to say it again. What
何とおっしゃい
did
ま
you
した
just
か？
say?
あなたのことが好きです。
I love you. It was really out of the blue. The landlord wanted to ascertain what Erica really meant, but the letter still had her back turned and her face was out of sight.
ありがとう
Thank
ござい
you
ます。
very much.
以前は別の子と付き合っていましたが、今は
I
完
was
全に
going
切れ
out
て
with
います。
another girl before, but I've completely broken up with her.
周りの人たちは僕たちを
Others
妬
are
んであ
going
り
to
も
be
しないこと
jealous
を
of
言いま
us
す
and
が、
say things that
気
aren't
にしない
true,
でください。
but don't pay them any attention.
俺は君に生
I
涯の
am
すべてを
gonna
捧げる
devote my whole life to
君
you,
も俺に
so I
全て
want
を
you to do
捧
the
げて
same
ほし
for
い。
me.
二人で一緒に
Let's find
幸
happiness
せになろ
together.
う。
Glanor avoided asking what she was talking about and stood there in silence. For a while, Erica kept on speaking in that dull and emotionless tone, repeating soppy phrases that might have popped up in some shoujo manga. Then, unexpectedly, she once again followed up with a complete non sequitur.
新しい財
A new wallet.
布。
Of course, she had no idea what Erica was saying. However, with her back still to Glanor, Erica kept on saying these connected words.
変な猫のキーホ
A
ル。
strange cat keychain,
趣味の合わない
a different style of cologne,
演劇の先
a
輩に
music
借り
tape
た
that's not to his
趣
style,
味違いの音
which he
楽
said he borrowed from an acting colleague.
先輩の付き
A
合い
colleague
で
asked him to come and he couldn't turn him down.
急にバイトが入っ
Work
ちゃ
suddenly called him in.
う。拉
In.
致の電話が長くて
His buddy
なかなか
called
切れ
him
ない
up and he couldn't get off the phone. He made too much curry. He started going to the theater practice more often. He started folding paper towels differently. Thanks, I've already eaten. He knew more than before about cosmetics. Sorry, I was sleeping. The toilet seat was left down. He spent the night over at his stage friend's place. Me and my acting friends had a party here. Someone just left it behind. The drain and sink were cleaned out. There were receipts and point cards from places he didn't usually go. The muddy soles are evidence that you went out on Monday when it was raining. It matches the strange symbol on the calendar. None of your theater friends have this long hair. Leading questions. How do you know the plot of a movie you haven't yet seen? Evidence, circumstantial evidence, observation, surveillance, tracking, tailing, information gathering, wiretapping, asking around, questioning. I found plenty of evidence that I loved you. I found plenty of evidence that you loved me. But I can't find any evidence that you haven't been cheating on me. Give it a rest. If you love me, then trust me. If you can't do that, then you don't love me anymore. How could I love someone like that? I'll treasure you for all my life, but I want to do well in theater just as much. You said you liked seeing me act, right? So why are you telling me to stop acting now? Why do I have to choose between you and acting? What's wrong with you? I am seriously tired of this, alright? Look, if all we do is fight when we see each other, maybe we both need some time to cool off, okay? I need to concentrate for my next performance anyway. One of my colleagues, she suddenly told us that she won't be able to perform. I need to rewrite the script by tomorrow. I don't have the time for this. You know what? If you really find it that hard to trust me, we're through. Don't bother coming over again. Just go home. I don't love you anymore. Stop crying. God, you're obnoxious. Go kill yourself, you creep. Stop shouting, damn it. I've got neighbors. Get the hell away from me and never come back. Without love, it cannot be seen.
逆なんですよ。
That's backwards.
愛なんかあるから
Because of love,
ありもしない
you
もの
end
が
up seeing things that
見えてしまう
don't even exist. It's nothing more than an illusion, one that no one except you can see, and one that can even one that not even you can touch. Without love, humans would never need to see that fiction, because we see it, we doubt, we suffer, we cry out loud.
私は今
Right now,
幸せ
I
で
am
す
happy.
仮とはいえ
Though it may be temporary, I have become the witch of truth.
今の私は
As I am now,
もう赤くない
I
言
no
葉に
longer need to worry about being tormented by non-read words.
あんたなら
What about you?
私のエン
How
ドゲー
would
ム
you have countered
どう
my
返します
endgame?
か
私
How
ですか
would I?
あの凡庸な
That
男
useless
じゃ
man wasn't
ゲ
fit
ー
to
ム
be
の
my
相手は務ま
opponent.
りませんでしたからあんたなら
I was wondering
どう返して
how
くれるかと
you would
思い
have
まして
countered it. Glanor was suddenly thrust into the position of Erika's opponent in the witch's game she had once challenged that man with. Glanor shared in these fragments of Erika's past, allowing her to grasp the full situation. The board was reproduced in full inside their heads. The situation was one-sided. Erika's side had constructed a blue truth based on countless bits of circumstantial evidence. He had turned all of those into pieces and was already cornering the opponent. For some time, Glenor fought in silence, and announced her by the book response.
初手
First move,
私が
I request that you submit evidence that I have been cheating.
青き真実で反
Cornered
論
with the blue truth,
構築に状況
I
証拠
present 84 points of
84
circumstantial and physical evidence.
青き真実
Counter
反
with the
論
blue truth.
今も愛し
I
続け
present
て
6
状況
points of
証拠
circumstantial and physical evidence that I still love you.
グッド青と青では相殺ですが
Blue and blue cancel each other out, but the number of pieces used to construct each is overwhelmingly unbalanced. When both opponents meet with blue truth, the decision is almost always based on which side has more pieces of evidence, regardless of the actual circumstances. This is especially true in the human world. So, by the standard rules, Erika would win.
一点先
First point to me.
取次なる
Your next move?
攻守逆転を狙
I
い
will
ます
attempt to switch offense and defense.
逆にエリカ
I
卿
ask
が
that
浮気
you,
をしてい
Lady
ない証
Erika,
拠の提出
provide
を
proof
求め
that
ます
you are not cheating.
パーペチュアルチェック
Perpetual check.
お互いが
That's
同
a
じ
formidable
質問を
move,
無限
since
に
it
させる
results in
信
an
じて
endless
もらえますか
repetition of the same
信じて
question going both ways.
では証拠なくも
Then I
現在も
frankly
エリカ卿
declare
を愛
that,
していること
despite
を
the lack of
率直に
proof,
表明
I
します
still love you even now.
赤き真実でな
No
いから
red
無
truth
効
and
です
therefore invalid. Even if it was red, that'd be a stalemate.
私に反論す
After
る
all,
手が
I have no
なくなり
move
ます
to
から
counter with. Delano remained silent for a while. She responded quietly to Erika's moves, as Erika drew closer and closer to checkmate. A stalemate is a forbidden move in the game of witches, since it means the ruin of the game. However, in chess, it also represents a draw. Because of this, it is a splendid final move that the weaker player can pull off if they are already unable to win outright. In this situation, Erika clearly had the advantage. It was natural that Glanor, her opponent, would seek a stalemate to obtain a draw. However, that only worked in chess. In the game where witches fought over the truth, it was a forbidden move. So it was already checkmate from the very beginning. Glanor had no way to turn the game around, but that meant that regardless of what the red truth had been, this game would...
他に手は
Any other moves?
真実を守る
Oh, witch hunting archbishop, protector of the truth.
いえ
No,
リザイン
I resign. See?
ほら
There you go. Erika had succeeded in crushing her opponent with the truth she exposed. That her former boyfriend no longer loved her and was cheating on her. Her opponent had no way to argue back. After all, humans are not allowed to use red, penso. A splendid game, a splendid finish from a superior position. Regardless of the truth of her opponent, Erika could win. A splendid victory. Dall'autore could only respond with silence, and with that, Erika spoke no more. She was probably done talking and wanted Dall'autore to leave. Dall'autore understood this, but even so, she wanted to tell Erika just one thing before leaving.
見事なゲーム
A
です
splendid game,
Erika.
Lady Erika.
探偵は勝利して
It's only natural that the
当然ですから
detective wins.
あなたは
Even before you became Lady Berncastel's piece,
実に
you
見事
truly
な
were a
青
splendid
真実
wielder
の
of the
使い
blue
手です
truth.
しかし
However, Lady Erika,
人間に許される
humans
の
are
は
only allowed to
青
use
き
the
真
blue
実
truth.
だけですそして青き真
And
実
the only
に
thing that
反
can
応できる
counter
のは
blue truth
赤き
is
真
red
実
truth.
だけそして赤き
And
真実
humans are not allowed to use the red truth.
ならばどうやって
In that case,
あなたのお相手
how
は
should your opponent
彼
have
の
shown
真実
you
を信
his
じればよ
truth?
かったのですか
さ
Who knows?
あ赤き真実
Maybe
に
you
時
should
に
have
勝る
used
と
that
か
gold truth or whatever, which is supposed to be stronger than red truth at times.
ゲームは確かにエリカ教
You
の勝
clearly
ち
were the victor in that game.
しかし真実の
However,
守護者として
allow me to say this as a protector of the truth.
なんです
What?
どうせ不愉快な
I imagine it's
ことでしょう
something unpleasant, so say it and go
か聞い
away.
てください
はい
Yes,
確かに
our game did end it with your victory.
しかし
However,
私が
you
示し
still
た
had not
あなたが
denied
今
the
も
6
愛してい
points
る
of
青
blue
い真
truth
実の
evidence
証
that
拠
I
6
showed
点
to claim
未
that
だ
I
否
still
定さ
loved
れて
you.
いませんあなたさえ
Even you are human.
それを否定す
You
る
are
赤き
unable
真
to
実
use the red truth that would disprove those points.
探偵権限で
Later on, I used the
84点の
detective's
証拠を赤
authority
き
to have
真実
all
に
84
後に
points
昇格させ
transformed
ました
into red truth
我が主のお力
by
に
the
よって
power of my master.
私は人間
I
に
am
して人
human,
間
yet I
を
am
超えた存
superior
在
to humans.
探偵にして魔
A
女
detective and a witch.
真実の
I
魔
am the
女
witch of
フ
truth.
ルドエリカです他に質
Any
問は
other questions?
捨てゼ
Parting
リフは
remarks?
ありません
I have none.
それでは失
In
礼い
that
たします
case, please excuse me. Dall'autore bowed and disappeared. After that, all that remained was a single witch of truth laughing off a bitter past, with an equally bitter smile. Erika glanced at the bedside clock, then saw that it was almost exactly midnight. Well, I suppose I should get a little
いい
sleep.
よいいよ
The curtains had finally risen on the second day, October 5th.
今頃
I wonder if the first of these games murder is happening somewhere about now.
今回の
I
実
hope our victims leave us some interesting dying messages this
よろしく
time.
お願いしますね
どうして母さんに相談しなかったの
Oi, oi, oi. Why didn't you discuss this with your
あ
mother?
なたの人生を最後ま
This
で
is
支
about
え
the
るパー
partner
トナ
who's
ーの
supposed to
話なの
support you
よ
throughout the rest of your life.
そうだよ
That's right.
生涯
She's the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with.
だからこそ
And that's
真
why
剣に
you
決め
need
な
to
ければい
choose
けない
very
でしょ
carefully, right?
どうしてそんな
How can you be
警察
so
に
rash? Eva and George could be seen beneath the eaves of the guest house. George had revealed his engagement with Shannon. Prima volta che ci riesce, eh? Prima volta che ci riesce in 6 episodi, vorrei dire. Eva's anger had exploded almost instantly. This had been no more than George had expected, so he had responded with an ice-cold calm.
まさかもう関係
Don't
を
tell me you consummated your relationship already.
子供ができたとか言われて
She told you
結
she
婚
was
してないからでしょ
pregnant to force you into marriage, didn't she?
失礼だな。
How rude.
僕は婚前の
I am a
貞操
strong believer that
厳しくあるべ
chastity
き
is to be preserved before marriage. Preserved before marriage. Lui è un bravo cristiano.
じゃあどうして
Then
婚
why
約
the
なんて
engagement?
僕は求めた。
I asked her.
彼女は受けた。
She accepted.
それで成立した。
What more could be needed?
違う
No, it's
違
so
うわ
wrong.
結婚はね
Marriage isn't as easy as it looks in manga or whatever you're thinking of.
先方のご両親
What about her parents?
両家の交流
Relationship between the two families?
あんた野良猫じゃ
You're
ないのよ
not some stray alley
後ろ
cat.
宮ジョージ
You
な
are
のよ
Ushiromiya George.
としたら
How
お
could
じ
you
い
be
様の
so
後継者に
rash
指名
now
されるかも
when
し
you
れない
might even
この
be
時期に
selected as grandfather's
どうしてそんな
successor?
軽率などうして母さん
Why
に
didn't
相
you
談してくれ
consult
なかったの
今こうして
I'm
相談してる。
consulting you right now. No,
So
not
Ranjani-
consulting, I suppose.
これは
I'm just
ただの報
informing
告
you.
だね。おじい様の後継
I've
者に
never
指名
pinned
さ
my
れるのは
hopes on being selected as grandfather's successor.
いや、
In fact, I'd rather refuse if it did come to that.
僕は
I want to build up my own country and castle
父
from
さんがそうし
scratch,
たように
just like father
何
did.
もない原野に築き上げたい。
あのね
Look,
父さんが今日
do
まで
you realize how hard your father worked to get where he is?
あんたが真似て
That's
でき
not
るようなこ
something
と
you
じゃ
could
ないの
duplicate just by imitating him.
今日まで
You have no idea how often he was saved by luck and coincidence.
そして母さん
And
と
he
いう
got through it
良
because
き
he
理
had
解者
you,
の伴侶がい
his
た。
wonderful life partner, by his side.
サヨは僕を支え、
Sayo is the kind of person who will support me and transform me into an even stronger man.
母さんが
You've praised me from becoming the adult that You've praised me for becoming the adult that I am, but that could never have happened without her. Huh?
いいジョージ
Listen, George.
とにかくここは
Just let your
一度
mother
母さん
handle
に
this
任
for
せなさ
now.
い頭を冷や
Cool
して
your head and think
よく考え
very
て
carefully.
シャノンちゃんだけが
Shannon-chan isn't the
あなた
only
に好意を
person
持ってるわけ
interested
じゃ
in
ない
you, you know?
お見合いした
The girl you
あ
had
ゆ
that marriage
みさん
meeting
だ
with,
あなたのことをとても気に入ってそう
Ayumi-san,
よ
really took a liking to
初
you.
耳だね。
That's the first I've heard of
あ
it.
なたも分かってる
I
と思っ
thought
て
you
たの
knew.
よ先方のご
Her
両親
parents were also very impressed by you.
もしあなた
If you really dream to build your own castle like your father, Ayumi-san is the one who'd really be able to help you,
あゆみ
right?
彼女の気持
Do
ち
you
を裏
intend
切
to
る
betray your feelings?
裏切るも何も
There's nothing to betray.
僕は
There was
あゆみさんと
never
とても
any
交流が
special relationship between Ayumi-san and me.
お見合いをして
We just had a marriage meeting and our parents got all fired up afterwards.
数度を無理やり引き
You
合わせ
made us go out together several times, but we never even looked each other's in the eye.
あゆみさんは育ちのいい奥ゆかしい女性でし
Cosa
ょ
vuol dire questa frase? Ayumi-san is a well-bred, modest woman.
男性のジョージに
She
目を合わ
just
せるなんて
she just couldn't look at you because you're a man and it would be embarrassing and ill-mannered.
あなたが
If you
目を
can't
見て
feel
話してくれな
anything
きゃ気
from
持ちが
her
感じられない
unless
と
she
言うなら
looks at you
彼
when
女
she
にそう
talks,
注意するわ
I'll advise her for that.
きっとこれからは
I'll
あなたの目を
advise her
見
of
て
that.
話してくれるはずよ
I'm sure she'll look at you from now on.
あゆみさんと結婚させたいのは
You want me to marry Ayumi-san because it would benefit you.
母さんの縁談
You
には
aren't pushing that engagement
僕
for
の
the
気持ち
sake of
が
anyone but
わずか
yourself.
ほども含まれていない。
ジョージ
George,
どうしてそんなことを言
how
うの
can you say that?
母さんがあなたのこと
Have
を
I
考え
ever
ない
failed
こと
to
だって
think about what's best for you?
ないでしょ
I haven't, have I?
親という漢字はどういう字
How is the parent kanji
木
written?
の上に立って
It
見ると
stands
書い
on
て
top
親
of
な
a
のよ
tree. And look,
母さんたちはね
it's what we've been doing.
あなたよりはるかに高みから
Surveying your entire future from a height far greater than you have access to.
そしてあなたが
From our vantage point, we can see that you are letting your momentary youthful emotions lead you down the wrong
だ
path.
からこうして
That's
憎ま
why
れ
I'm
ることを
saying
承知で言ってる
what
の
I
よ
am, even though I know you'll hate me for it.
あんたがどうでもいい子だった
If I
ら
didn't care
こ
for
んな
you,
喧嘩しない
we
わ
wouldn't be having this fight.
どこの変な女とでも勝手
I'd
に
just
結婚
tell
し
you
な
to
さい
marry whatever
本当
strange
わけないわ
girl you
よ
like and leave you be. You hear me, George?
母さんに全て
Leave
任せな
this
さ
to
い
your mother.
もうあなたは
There's
シャノン
no
ちゃんに会
need
わな
for
く
you
て
to
いい
meet with Shannon-chan anymore. We'll take care of everything
母
for
さん
you.
たちで話をつけてあげる大丈夫よ
Don't worry, we won't have Shannon-chan mistreated. After all, it's thanks to her that you've grown so much, right? We'll take that into account. So leave the rest to us. Sometime during Eva's rage, tears had started to drip from her eyes. As though those tears had caused him to hesitate, George turned his back and sagged his shoulders. George was, after all, only a child of man. Though he understood that marriage required nothing more than the consent of both people, he couldn't get over his desire for his parents' acceptance. And so he was torn between the tears of the mother who had always helped him and the fiancé he had chosen. Or was he?
もういいよ
I think it's time.
そろそろ
It's time now.
今日まで
All my life,
立派に育ててもらっ
you've
て
done a great job
本当に
raising me,
感謝してる
and I'm truly grateful for that.
僕も
When I have children and become a parent,
母さんみたいな親
I'll
になり
become a parent like you.
子供のために
I'll be the kind of parent who's worthy of respect in the entire
世界で
world.
一番尊敬
One
で
who
きる
can
親
truly fight for his children's sake.
ジョージ
With his back still towards her, George threw away his umbrella and slowly stepped out from beneath the eaves into the rain. Then he slowly turned around. It was without a doubt the familiar face of Eva's beloved son. However, he stood there now as his own man, self-controlled and independent, enough that the blood connection between them might even be forgotten.
そろそろいいと
I think it's about time now.
何が
For what?
お離れして
For you to let
いい
go
んじゃない
of your son, mother.
ここからはも
Let's talk the rest of this out as people, not as mother and son.
う僕はジョージ
I am George.
君はエ
You are
ヴァ親
Eva.
だからどうこうと
Let's
いう
drop the because I am your parent routine. Speak for ourselves and say what we really mean.
君が
The reason you want to choose the person I marry is for financial reasons, public appearances, and so that you can posture in that still continuing quarrel between you and your siblings.
それ以外に
You have no other reason.
いっそ
You
それ
do
をすっ
well
き
to
り認め
just
て
come
くれた
clean
方
and
が
admit it now.
潔いね僕はこれから
I'm going to start speaking on
僕
my
の
own
立場だけにな
behalf.
るから君もそうした方
I
が
suggest
いい
that
ん
you
じゃ
do the same.
負けるよ君
You'll lose, I'm warning you. George's eyes no longer contained any trace of his love and respect for his mother. There was only a frigid glare as he gazed ruthlessly down at the witch who was trying to bind his future.
ジョージどうして母さんをそんな目で見るの
George, why are you looking at your mother like that?
今
Because I'm not looking at my mother right
母
now.
さんを見ていないからさ僕の目に映っているのは
All I see is a wall, a trial standing in the way of the future I'm trying to grasp.
母さんだって人間だ
You're your own person too.
夢や野心が
I know that you have dreams and ambitions and that you're still chasing after those.
そしてそれを
And I think that's a wonderful thing.
自分の夢を決して諦
We
めない
also know
こと
how
の
hard
大変
it
さを
is for a person to chase their dreams without giving up. I need to inherit your wonderful strength. I've learned a lot from your parents, my friends, and Sayo, and I've grown from. I've grown a lot from my parents, my friends, and Sayo. I've grown.
その最後に生まれ
And that final,
獲得し
finished
て完成
product,
されるのが
after
本当の
everything I've learned and
後ろには
acquired,
ジョージという
is
男
the
だ
real Ushiromiya George.
僕は今
Now I'll overcome the final barrier.
超
You.
える 何
What? Eva disappeared. The pouring rain landed evenly across the ground everywhere. No, it was blocked very slightly in one place. However, there was no one there. Standing in the ground isn't the only way to block the path of rain. Then, could it be? Yes!
いいわよ
Alright then.
本音をぶつけ合う
Sometimes it's good to be brutally honest.
私も言っちゃ
I'll
う
speak my mind.
だからあなたも言っちゃ
So
う
why don't you just lay there out there what mamma mia. So why don't you just lay out there forever? In the rain-filled sky with the moon that shouldn't have been visible behind her was the golden witch of the future who had finally obtained everything of the Ushiromiya family. Ayagata. Even the drastic change in his mother's appearance didn't faze George. On the contrary, he seemed to be moved by her boldness, because his mother had honestly and truly displayed her true nature. Now, I can confidently show her my true self.
行くよカズ
Here we go, mother.
そして
Eva,
これが僕の
this is my first step
束縛から
towards
踏み出る
escaping from your shackles.
第一
First step? With that first step, he felt something odd beneath his feet. He knew that this sticky sensation... He knew that this sticky sensation, which didn't quite feel like mud, represented his mother's arrogance trying to prevent him from making that first step.
小さい頃
I used to read to you all the time when you were little, didn't I?
あなたが大
Do you remember your favorite story, Journey to the West?
懐かしい
That takes me back. That's probably the first fantasy I really loved. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, wanted to become a god and was tested by Buddha. The Buddha told him, if you can jump free from the palm of my hand, I will grant you your wish. Then Sun Wukong managed to reach what he thought was the end of the world and found 5 pillars standing there, only to discover that they were the Buddha's finger and that he still hadn't left the Buddha's hand.
僕が母さんから
Are you saying that's what my first step is like? Your resistance, your conflict, your anguish and self-restraint, and everything else. All of it is the road I once traveled down.
あなたのその第
This first step of yours will be overwhelmed by my life.
いつまで目
How long are you gonna turn a blind eye to it?
見ちゃえば
Why not look
足
at
元
what you're standing on? On the pitch black earth soaked by the pounding rain, there were what appeared to be ominously glowing bands of faint red, and George had placed his first step directly on top of one. It was deep and viscous, and he held George's foot in place. From Eva's perspective, as she looked down from the sky, it looked like a vast red spider web that radiated out with George at the center.
そうさ
That's
これ
right.
が僕さ
This is me.
生まれた時から
This is
数
me,
々の
tied
悩みを
down
縛
by
り
a
付け
life of constant
あんた
instruction
の野望のため
and
だけに
raised
育てられ
solely
て
for
き
the
た
sake of your ambitions.
いいえそれ
No,
は違
you're
う
wrong about that. Let me make it so that you can understand.
見せてあげ
I'll
る
show you,
そして
and then you'll realize the truth forever. The vast red spiderweb on the ground scooped up George as easily as scooping scum out of a pot. Then he lifted him into the air like a deer caught in the net and swung him about. A deer caught in a net. Non so che deer vengono prese da una... Vabbè. Eva's insane laugh was as innocent as a grade schooler happily swinging about a bag filled with her gym clothes, and cruel in equal measure. Come on, try to remember, okay? What happened on Tuesdays? Sì, Giovere, è quella che fa. Ovviamente non potevate saperlo, ma l'avevamo già visto usare le reti, quindi non era spoiler, dai. Yeah,
覚えてるさ
of course I remember.
ピアノ教室
That was piano lessons. I still cringe whether I heard I stepped on the cat.
逆らすね
You did violin in kindergarten. That's the sort of instrument you would expect smart kids to play, right? But you didn't seem to have the talent. So we switch you over to piano. Then, do you remember Wednesdays?
覚
I
えてる
remember.
進学塾の日だ
That was the day for crime school. It was so far away and a real pain to have to travel to. And Thursdays? La Madonna. Supplemental lessons. You were just terrible at the subjects with memorization, weren't you? You could apply your knowledge, but you were horrible at learning by rote. A classic, he can do it if he tries, kid. Oh no, è intelligente ma non si applica. George era quello.
痛烈だね
That one stung.
子供が三者面談で
Those are the most annoying words a kid can hear at a parent-teacher conference.
馬を水場に
You
連れて
can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
ことはできない
イギリスの格言だ
That's a
ね
British proverb, isn't it?
あなたのやる気を
Making you
出して
motivated and keeping you that way
一番
was the hardest thing to do. Madonna. Ha tutte le vocali. Tanto sta prendendo fortissimo. Job. Chi è Job? Mi sono inventato. Nuovo personaggio. George was bound hand and foot by the bright red spiderweb, reduced to the witch's plaything. She would innocently swing him around and smash him about, all with an insane laugh, again and again.
金曜日は覚え
Do you remember Friday?
もちろんさ
Scusate, mi avete fatto ridere. Of course.
ユニークな
No.
塾だ
Oh, of course. As far as after school lessons go, that was pretty
親
unique.
と一緒の塾だ
Having a parent present while I studied was a trying experience in multiple ways.
ここに釣り竿を
Don't buy your child a fishing rod. Go fishing with him.
母さんが
You do like a British education, don't you, mother?
親にとっても
Those
辛い
lessons were a pain for us parents too.
でも
But for you, that was the most effective one.
高いお
The monthly fee was high, and it was a pain to have to spend Friday nights there every week.
でも
But it was the most effective.
効果があったその時
That's when I realized
子供はね
kids don't grow unless their parents watch over them.
子が寝ない
If children are sprouts, then parents are the sun.
太陽
No plants will bud, and no flowers will bloom without the
し
sun.
ないの
Vabbè, comunque. Still bound hand and foot, George was thrown, slammed and smashed. He could do nothing. He was still like Son Wukong, unable to leave the palm of his mother's hand. However, since he wouldn't surrender, he could still show resistance at any time.
じゃあ土曜日は
Then, what about Saturdays? And what about Saturdays? What about
家庭
Saturdays?
教師が来てくれて
That's when the tutor came.
向こうから来てくれ
He came to our house, which made it much easier,
正
right?
規である
It was painful to have to invite some other person into my own room, my sacred space, every single week.
先生が帰った後
And I
に残る
hated
汗
the
は
sweaty smell left behind so much that I can still remember it.
あなたに学
He was a wonderful teacher who drilled a scholarly attitude into you.
Oh,
Aspetta. avrei dovuto leggerlo molto più incazzato, ma lascio fare la doppiatrice.
弁護士の相談費用並みのお月謝を払った甲斐が本当にあったわ。
His monthly fees were on par on a lawyer's consultation fee, but it was really well worth it.
そして迎える日曜
And
日
then come Sundays,
塾の予定がない
followed
月
by
曜日
Monday when I didn't have any extra school. The only 2 days when I could have some rest.
これは皮肉だね
How ironic.
火曜日から土曜日までの
So it was those extra classes from Tuesday until Saturday that were holding me down all this time.
まさに僕は
It really was that, just like San Wukong. Yeah, if you think you can escape from the palm of my hand, you can have the arrogance crushed by the Buddha's 5 mountains.
冗談で潰してもらうといいわ。
Sun Wukong, who wanted to become a god, was crushed by the 5 mountains of fire, water, wood, metal and earth and sealed away. These are the 5 elements that the day of the week, Tuesday through Saturday, are named after in Japanese. Only now did George, who had always admired Sun Wukong, recognize this greatest of ironies.
思い上がったあなたは
Just like Sun Wukong, you need some reflection and punishment for your arrogance.
あなたが
If you show that you're willing to reform yourself, I'll release you.
それは解放じゃない
That's not being released.
洗脳だ
It's brainwashing.
何も考えなくていい
There's
の。
no need to think about anything. Why don't just leave everything to Mama forever?
私が
I'll decide everything for you. That's the best kind of life for you.
素晴らしい人生なのよ。
世界で
I'll arrange the most intellectual and selfless woman in the world for you.
用意してあげるすべての成功
I'll even prepare your every success and even pave the way there.
ママが用意してあげるわ。そして
And eventually, you will be chosen for the highest honor in the Ushiramiya family, the position of successor to the head.
指名されるの。それから初めて
That's when you can think about beginning life for yourself.
第一
First step? Don't make me laugh. You still haven't even been born yet.
これは
This isn't my web that you're caught in.
じゃないよあんた
You're inside my caring, nurturing
私の
womb.
子宮の中なのよ。
George was slammed against the ground over and over. It was heartless cruelty, unlike anything one could expect from a blood-related son to receive. However, in Eva's eyes, perhaps even this was a sign of love for her precious son. The human-shaped lump of flesh ensnared in the red net was slammed over and over, then thrown high into the air, when he was caught by a massive spider web suspended into the sky. George hung there pitifully as though crucified, still covered in fresh blood and not even twitching. Even if there had been some power to resist remaining to him, the red web holding him there would have held even that in check. The rain, which had been falling non-stop since the beginning, quietly tormented and pitied him.
五行山に封じられ
Cool your head while you're sealed by the 5 mountains.
シャノンちゃん
I'm not telling you to stop because I think Shannon-chan is a bad kid, okay?
彼女は上手
She's a great girl, the one who gave you the chance you needed to grow up.
でも
But an ill-considered engagement is a whole different matter.
相手が彼女だからいけないと言ってるわけ
It isn't because there's a problem with her.
それを分かり
Understand that.
友を責めるな
Don't criticize the friend.
行為を責める
Criticize the behavior, right?
これもイギリスの格
That's
言だ
another piece of British advice.
本当にあなたは
I really
賢
did
い子に
raise you
育った
to be a
わ
smart kid.
いいえ
No, I am still raising you.
私のお腹の中
Inside
で
my belly, that is.
もう少
You
し
just need to be nurtured a little longer.
さ
Okay? That's enough punishment. So apologize to your mother. The spider web released George reluctantly. Vaffanculo. Reluctantly. Vaffanculo. Then he threw him to the ground beneath the cloudy sky.
ありがとう母さん
Thank you, mother. It was all George could do. Aspetta. Okay. It was all George could do to get up on his hands and knees. Though he wiped the mud away and stood his ground, he still couldn't raise his
これ
head.
までの全て
Everything you've done so far,
がことだ
you've done for me, haven't you?
ありがとう
Thank
本
you.
当にありがとう
Thanks for everything.
そうよ
That's right.
今は憎いでし
You
ょ
must hate me right now.
でもいつ
But
か
one day,
と感
you'll
謝
be
するわ
grateful.
私がどれほど
I'm sure you'll
あなたを愛してい
understand
た
how
か
much I loved you.
と理解する
火曜日から土曜日まで
All those
連日の塾
restrictive
で
extra
縛り
classes from Tuesday to Saturday
僕を立派な男に
were
育てよ
your
うと
sincere efforts to raise me to be a great man.
これもイギリスの
And that's another British phrase.
子供を
To
幸
wrap
福
a
で
child in
包むことは
blessing is the greatest education of all.
ありがと
Thank
うだ
you.
から僕からも母さん
I'll
に
give you a British saying
イ
in
ギリスの
return.
格言を送るよ
何
What's that?
全ての木に
Take one chop at every tree
一本の木
and
を
none of them will
切り
fall.
倒せば死ぬ
何
Hmm?
それは
And
どういう
what does that
意味
mean?
こっちの方がいいかな
Maybe this one is clearer.
学問に時間を費
Spend
やし
too
すぎる
much
ことは
time in studies is
怠惰
sloth.
にしすぎないフランシスコ
Francis Bacon. The man drenched in mud and fresh blood straightened his crooked glasses and slowly stood up. Though he was covered in filth, his appearance had a divine quality to it. Something that could only appear on a self-controlled man, not one who had merely been dozing in his mother's amniotic fluid.
僕がサヨから学んだ
I cannot count the number of things I've learned from Sayo.
僕は彼女の前で
She
初め
taught
て
me
勇気と
courage and chivalry,
向上
how to be ambitious and witty and humorous, and just a little
ちょっとのお
stylish.
しゃれも学んだんだ皮肉だね
It's ironic. Almost all of these things you say are so wonderful about me
母さんの教育
didn't come.
頼む
All of these things you say are so wonderful about me didn't come from you at all.
ジョージ
George, you're still
そんなこと
going on about that?
戻してあげるわ母さんの子宮に
Time to get back into mother's womb.
そしてもう一度
I'll
温かな海で
nurture
育
you
て
into
直してあげる
in a sea of warmth once more. Oh no. Eva howled. Another bright red spider web appeared at George's feet and tried to scoop him up into the air again. However, that instant, a powerful magic circle could be seen in the area surrounding George for just a moment. Faster than he could be scooped up by the spider web, George jumped, and with a sharp kick off the heel and a magnificent forward flip, he cut the shackles of the spider webs apart. Dai, è come Gap. Come con Gap in episodio 4. What? That smooth movement proved that he possessed the power to escape from those shackles all along. He had willingly allowed himself to be bound by that web.
母さんのこれまでの
Everything I owe for what you've done. Everything I owe you for what you've done, I've paid back now with pain.
おかげで僕も
Now I can finally leave the nest for good.
必要だね
It really is necessary, isn't
た
it?
まには
To have the occasional argument with one's parents.
ジョージ
George, why would you disobey me so completely?
あんなこ
That stupid girl!
必要なのはやはり
It really looks like it looks. Mamma mia, non so leggere le parole in ordine. It looks like it really is you who needs to let go, mother.
じゃあ
So,
そろ
if
そ
you're
ろ
ready. Ready for what?
何がよ
そろそろいい
If you're ready,
反撃しても
may I fight back? The curtain of spider webs that Eva shot out in defense were all too slow. George weaved through them in an instant, and the next he was right before her eyes. Eva jumped out of the way of a kick that would have knocked her feet off. Eva jumped out of the way of a kick that would have knocked her feet off from under her, then blocked the second half of George's double roundhouse with a high kick of her own. I guess there is one extracurricular activity I can thank you for. What day of the week was that? It's all the martial art classes you made me attend whenever I had a long break from school. I'm glad, George, to hear you're grateful for at least one thing. Your mother is happy. Quanto è così stupida la sua risata, la adoro. È proprio una risata sgraziata, mi piace da morire. Questa Eva's sweet feet flashed like lightning. Low, mid-level attack. As George's head fell forwards, she caught in both hands as though she was about to smash it against the ground. It was then met with Eva's knee as it rose like a bolt of lightning from the earth. Ma gli ha preso la testa e gli ha tirato una ginocchiata. Boom! You should have learned Muay Thai too. It would have been more fun to have learned it with you. You're right. I had the most fun when I was learning martial arts with you. And now it's the most fun. Isn't this fun, George? Isn't it? Stanno menando, qua tipo Dragon Ball, no? Che arrivano da una parte e poi quell'altra. Find this fun, mother? To play with your son like this? Yes, I do. You are my darling son, so I'll give you lots and lots of love inside my belly. Ti prego, basta con questa immagine. I even love the way you kick inside me. No, ti prego. I got it. But this kick is coming from the outside of your belly. George buried his knee sharply into Eva's abdomen. An instant before she felt the pain of that fierce attack, Eva watched her son kick with a proud smile, and then she vomited. Immaginavo. You're getting on in years, mother. Maybe it's time for you to help back on wearing childish clothes like that. Her chin still covered in vomit. Ew. Eva looked up at George in twisted anguish. She could see how pathetic her face was by a reflection in his glasses. Both you and I need to leave our childhood days behind. So long, mother. Gli fa il calcio incredibile che aveva fatto contro Gap, che poi è stato usato per uccidere Jessica. Almeno nella versione magica. The violent lightning and rain made time freeze. George's beautiful kick had stopped an inch from Eva's chest. However, the point of red magic circle surrounding George had already pierced Eva's body. Though he had stopped without hitting her, blood poured out of Eva's back. No wound had been left on her chest, but the heart inside it had been struck through. Eva slumped backwards and landed in a puddle with a splash. There were no convulsions. Her life had been ended without leaving her even an instant to write about in pain. I know you're somewhere over there, Gap. As he straightened his glasses, George spoke to the rose thicket behind him. Then a pitch-black hole opened in the air, and there, a Gap jumped out. Impressive. Even considering that it was before her ascension, you managed to defeat Eva Beatrice.
やはりいたかい。
I thought you were
余
there.
計なちょっかいを出さない。
Thanks for not
親子
interfering.
水入らずで
I'm glad we were able to keep it between mother and son.
まさか
Don't thank me.
いなかった
I wasn't there.
今
I wasn't
あ
here.
なたが私を召
You
喚した
summoned
ん
me
だわ
just now.
どっちでもいいさ。
Doesn't matter either
君
way.
にお願いが
I have something to ask of you.
聞く義理はあるの
Do we have some duty to listen?
聞いてくれないのかい。
Will you not do this for me? With his back still facing her, George reset his glasses. The threat in his voice held the solemn presence of a king who ruled over demons. Come in episodio 4. His Majesty made gap gulp, and she licked her lips before bowing respectfully to his back. Proprio. Okay, scusa.
私はイケてる男が
I
好
like
きだ
that. Ti pareva.
王女はもっと好
But I
き
like monarchs even more.
何なりとお命じ
Your wish is my command,
No.
your demon majesty.
後ろ宮家の当主に憧
I
れ
want you to lay your body to rest in a place fitting for a woman who admired the head of the Ushiromiya family
ふさわしい
and who lived their life with the misguided dreams of that position.
じゃあ
So,
Kinzo
Kinzo study?
いや
No.
貴賓室
The VIP room would be good.
屋敷の2階の
That never opened VIP room on the second floor of the mansion.
あの
Ah, that room.
部屋了解したわ
As you wish, your
George.
majesty. Ma quindi questo è da interpretare come George che l'ha uccisa veramente? Gap approached Eva's corpse and lightly tapped the ground with her right heel. Ha fatto un tic tic. When she did, a large hole opened up and swallowed both Gap and the corpse and closed. After a while, a small hole opened in the air, and the staff Eva always carried, which was marked with one winged eagle that symbolized the head of the Ushiromiya family, was spat into a puddle, because the corpse would no longer have any use for it. Adesso la prende George, George slowly approached that staff and stepped down hard on the tip. Okay, niente. When he did, the staff spun violently into the air, and after passing by the blue moon which honored the Demon King, it flew into George's outstretched hand. Ah, ok, allora effettivamente ha fatto tipo il trick. Ha fatto il trick. Vorrei vederla nel manga sta cosa, George con la cosa. The instant he grasped it, another fierce bolt of lightning struck nearby. And by the time the flash faded, the staff he was holding had become a spray of gold butterflies and disappeared. It was as though George held the staff up to the heavens and crushed it out of existence.
これで
And now,
僕はノルマクリア
I finished my part.
次の人に番を
I'll
譲
let
る
someone else have a turn.
自分の母さんを
Can't believe
手にかけるなんて
killed your own mother.
自分を世界で
It
一
was
番
the
最初
person
に
who
愛してくれ
loves
る人
you
で
first in the world.
そして
And the last one you have to separate yourself from.
決別すべき人だ。それが
That's what it means to leave your
Io
home. Oddio, non direi che uccidere la propria madre sia... Vabbè, però ho capito cosa intendi.
これが僕が
This is the courage I am
Sayo
capable of
Midori
showing to take Sayo as
Yuki.
my wife.
ジョージ様
George-sama. George-sama, hai ucciso tua madre per me, che romantico.
あっぱれなり後ろ宮
Bravo, Ushiromiya
ま
George.
ずは見事
An
である
excellent start. E però la first
たとえ
Twilight
ゲー
sono
ム上の
6.
こととはいえ
Even though it was just within the
他の
game,
こととはいえ
even though she was just a
自分の
piece,
母親を殺すのは
I didn't like having to kill my mother.
しかし
However, that was the trial you set me, so I saw it through. He stared at the two demons. The two demons looked at each other, then showed their surprise with their now familiar exaggerated gestures. Wonderful! Wasn't that splendid, Zepar?
そうだね
Indeed it was. Furfur. George-kun determination is the real deal.
どうやら僕は
It
君を
seems
見
I've
誤っていた
misjudged
ようだね謝るよ許
Please
してほしい
accept my apologies. George chose not to go along with the most theatrical conversation, with this almost theatrical conversation. He quietly looked down upon the game board, found the piece representing his mother, which was right next to his, and tipped it over. This was the trial that Zepar and Furfur had set them. For the love of each other, take the life of another. It was similar to the game within Beato's fourth game, where they were each given 3 options as part of a test to select the next family head. However, a pair of lovers would never abandon each other's lives, so they were automatically left with just the option of sacrificing the life of another. Instead, in fact, it was merciful that the demons hadn't ordered them to take the lives of everyone other than themselves. And besides, it only meant taking those lives as pieces on the board. For the versions of themselves to whom the game board was the only world, this was a tragic parricide. But for the ones who sat around the game board in the witch tea room, it was nothing more than a movement of the pieces representing Joe's will to overcome his parents. However, even if it was just a single life within one of an infinite number of fragmented worlds, the fact remained that the demons had forced him to take it. George appeared to have distanced himself from the events of the demon game board, but Jessica still seemed to resist the idea of stealing another person's life, even if it was only their life as a game piece. Ma quindi praticamente adesso ci sono 2 game board, perché questi, George e Jessica e il resto del cast, sono già nella game board di Butler. E i Zepar e Furfur hanno un'altra game board dentro la game board, e quindi c'è tipo un terzo livello di realtà. Cioè ci sono diversi layers di realtà in questo momento. C'è il Butler e Butler giocatore, ok? Quel mondo. Sotto c'è la sua game board che ha creato. Sotto di questa c'è la game board di Zepar e Furfur. Wow. Are you getting cold feet? No. The Beatrice, the Butler's and desires will never be shaken by the likes of this. Well then, who will take the next trial? It can be anyone. Please choose the next victim. It can be anyone. Let the next challenger step forward. È Jessica, immagino. O Beatrice? If no one will step forward, that means I win, doesn't it? Yes, that's right. Then congratulations are in order, Ushrame George. The key that leads to a successful love between you and the one you cherish, we bestow it upon you. Wait! As the demons delightedly named George as the victor, they were interrupted by the next challenger. Jessica-chan? I'll go next. Fine. I'm game. I'll show you that my feelings for Kan-kun aren't just silly childish crush. E chi ucciderà Jessica secondo voi? Stavo per fare ho appena fatto la domanda. Chi ucciderà lei? Romantic regrets. As usual, this year's family conference was getting bogged down. Everyone had decided to cool their heads for a moment, and a short break had been agreed upon. The 4 siblings could say whatever they wanted, but Naku and Enkirie, for example, were outsiders and found it difficult to speak freely in this sort of atmosphere. A conference when you aren't allowed to say what you want can be tiring even as you just sit there quietly. Even Kirie couldn't help letting out a deep sigh. This was the second floor hallway of the mansion. Rudolph had wanted to be alone during the break, and so she felt like doing the same, and had drifted up the stairs to reach this place. Her expression was less tightly controlled than he was when her husband was around. Kiria wore a tired look that she didn't often show. She pressed her forehead against the cool window glass. I need to regain my spirit and support my husband, even if I'm not allowed to speak. That's the duty I've won.
誰？
Who is it? Oh! She suddenly sensed another person, turned around, and saw Jessica standing at the other end of the hallway.
あら、
Oh,
ジェシカちゃん
it's you, Jessica-chan.
ゲストハウスに行ったんじゃなか
Didn't
った
you go to the guest house?
ちょっと
Well,
本を
I just decided to head back to my own room for a bit to get a book.
そう、
I see.
ゲストハウスに戻る。
And now you're on your way back to the guest house?
はい
Yes,
そうです
that's right.
嫌な雨ね。
What a horrible
風
rain.
はだいぶ強い
Is
の
the
かしら。
wind really strong?
今は比較的
It's weak right now, relatively speaking. As Kiria looked out of the window, Jessica watched her back, looking agitated.
キリエおばさん
Kiria,
ごめんよ
I'm sorry, you just had
運
bad
がなか
luck.
ったと思ってくれ
Ah, Zepar!
ジェシカの運命の
Jessica's roulette of fate had chosen Kiria.
しまったわ。
どうするんだい
Oh,
ジェ
what
シカ
will you do, Jessica?
ルーレットは
The roulette has chosen Kiria,
それを
but you
拒否して
may
再び
reject
ルー
that
レッ
choice
トを
and spin the
回すの
roulette again if you
君の
wish.
勝手さ試練に捧げる
It doesn't matter whose life is sacrificed for this trial. Jessica wasn't like George. George had willingly chosen Eva to be his sacrifice, to signify separation from his old life so that he could step into a new life married to Shannon. However, Jessica hadn't thought of any particular target, so she had just left it up to the roulette of fate. Ma adesso che faccio? Scusami, Poretta va lì, la coltella da dietro, non lo so. The roulette was nothing very grandiose. She simply walked around her at random, imposing a rule on herself, saying that the first person she met would be chosen as a sacrifice. E questo in realtà secondo me è un po' un modo per spiegare la roulette nei giochi, nei primi giochi, no? La roulette un cazzo, la roulette è quello che vuoi, nel caso di Beatrice, cioè quando vuole, cioè nel caso di, sì, Beatrice per nome ombrello per dire l'assassino, ok? Non c'è una roulette. Al massimo è a caso, ma nel senso il primo che trova, ma di solito c'è sempre un piano, c'è sempre un... ecco. And so, the roulette of fate had brought her to Kiria. Of course, there was nothing forcing her to keep that rule. However, it was the rule that she had decided upon, and she didn't want to break it now. Now that she was participating in this demon's game, this was the one bit of justice that she could cling to. Sì, esatto, Jover. Right now she could attack that unprotected back, but Jessica wasn't able to fully resolve herself.
どうしたの？
What is it?
何か私に
Do you
話
have
でも？
something to say to me? Noticing Jessica's strange silence, Kiria turned around. That unprotected back was already gone. Jessica realized that her hesitation had cost her her own first chance. She had taken on this demon's game to prove her love for Canon. However, would it really be alright to sell her soul to demons for the sake of love? Not wanting to let George, who had already come to terms with the situation, get any more of a lead on her, she had energetically consented to this demon's game, but her heart still wasn't ready. Maybe I shouldn't be asking you this, Auntie Kiria.
何？
What is
ジェ
it?
シカちゃんが私に
It's
質
rare
問
for
なん
you
て
to ask
珍
me
しいよね。
questions, Jessica-chan.
答えられるもの
I
だといい
hope
んだ
I'm
け
able
ど。
to answering it for you.
実は
Actually, I
私好きな人がいるんです
have someone I like.
あら、
Oh,
そうなの？
really?
それは素敵ね。
That's wonderful.
まさか。
Then it is
恋の相談なの？
love you wanted to talk about?
そんな
Yeah,
ところです
pretty much.
いいわよ。
Alright,
私でよけれ
I'll
ば
help
近い
you
んだ
out if I can.
ありがとうございます
Thank you very much.
実はそれで
Actually, Is it still one-sided?
いえ
No, I guess you could say that it just become mutual.
ただその
But well, there's this trial for us to be joined
試練
together.
があって
試練
Trial?
何それ
What are you talking about?
私たちともう一組の恋
There's
人たち
two of us and another pair of lovers, and we have to
争わなく
fight
ちゃ
each
ならない
other.
んです
三角
A
関係
love
そ
triangle?
れとも四角
Or a love rectangle?
複雑そうね
Sounds complicated, and
勝った方の
only
恋
the
人同士
pair who wins can be together.
そういう
It's
複雑
something
なことになってるん
complicated
です
like that.
つまりそう
So it's like,
嫌な話ね
sounds nasty.
相手を踏み台
Love
にして
can
しか
only succeed at
どちらも
another
成就できない
couple
こと
expenses.
はい自分
Yes.
たちが結ばれ
If we
れば
joined up, then
相手が
they'll
破綻
fall
します
apart.
そして
And the same the other way around.
質問の趣旨が
I
大体
think I see where you're going with
こういう
this.
ことでしょ
Something like this,
人は
right?
幸せになる
To
た
what
めに
extent is a
どこまで
person
他者を
allowed to
踏み台に
climb
する
over
ことが許
others
さ
in
れる
their
の
own
か
pursuit of
でしょ
happiness, right? It was once again apparent just how smart Kiria was. She immediately figured out the question that Jessica wanted to ask most.
戦わなければ自動
If
的
you
に
don't
相手に
fight,
勝
it
って
automatically means that they win and you
し
lose.
かし戦って勝てば
However, if
相
you
手を
do
破綻
fight
させ
and
ること
win,
に
you cause the other pair to break apart.
どちらも嫌な話ね
It's nasty either
で
way.
も
But the answer is obvious.
はい
Yes. Kiria giggled. If she wasn't willing to commit to her love, then that would show the measure of their relationship. If that was the case, she should just let the other pair of lovers win. However, if this was a love she couldn't abandon, she couldn't abandon the victory either, so she had no option but to fight. In the end, Jessica's hesitation was caused by guilt over forcing the other to split apart as a result of her inevitable decision.
やっぱり
I guess
私
I
は
am just
甘えているでしょうか
being soft after
そう
all.
ね
Yep,
甘えてるわ
that you are.
でも
But stepping over someone else for the sake of my own love just feels horrible.
じゃあ
In that
ジェシカ
case,
ちゃんは
what
恋の
about the
お相
one
手
you
を
love?
諦める
Will you give up on them?
それは
断言するわ
I can tell you one thing for
そ
certain.
の方が辛いわ
Doing that would feel even worse.
地獄を這うこと
You'll be forced to crawl through hell
生涯ね
for the rest of your life. A hardness had entered Kiria's gaze.
私は6歳だ
I
った
was
から
just 6, so
当時は
I
何も
didn't
わからなかった
understand much about it at the
遺品の
time.
中に
But I found
お母さんの
mom's
手記があった
notebook among her belongings after she died. Oh!
それは
Was
日
it
記
a
のよう
diary?
なものかどちらかとい
It
うと
was more of a
随想録
collection of her
日
thoughts.
記よりも
It was
もっと
much less
アバウトなもの
organized than a diary would have been.
亡くなってすぐに
I
そ
found
れを
it
見つ
and
けて
read
読ん
it
だけど
right after she passed away.
その意味を理解で
But
き
I
るように
needed
な
to
る
wait a
のは
long time until I'd grown for several
私が
years
成長を
before
待
I
たな
could
ければならなかった
understand it.
なるほど
I
キリ
see.
エの夫婦
So
仲
it
に
did
ついて
speak
の
of
悩みが
Kiria's worries
記
about
さ
her
れているん
marriage.
だ
あれは
It was
完全にお母さんの
practically a
呪い
book
帳
of
よね
curses.
その中身は
It cleared up several things that 6 years old me had always vaguely sensed.
次々
When I was 6, it seemed as though my parents were very close and had no problems. And though I did think I did think it odd that Onichan lived separately when he was meant to be part of our family, and I did wonder why he only came home every once in a while, I accepted it as the way things were.
アスムのことは知らなかった
Did you not know about
お
Asumu?
兄ちゃんが
I
誰もいない
think
時に
Onichan
話して
talked
く
to
れた
me
ような気
about
がする
her
けど
about her when no one was around, but there was no way an elementary schooler like I could understand.
だって
After all, not even I never even seen a picture of
お
her.
母さんは
Mother has sent all the pictures with Asumu-san in them to Onichan,
家の
leaving
中
none
に一
behind
切
the
残さなかっ
house.
たそうだから
In front of Enge, and even in front of Butler, who had only rarely came home, Kiria's smile never faltered. If she hadn't written her thoughts in that notebook, Enge would probably never have known them. Rudolph had been practically popular with the opposite sex since school days. Typical playboy, audacious, over the top, and yet not lacking a little gentleness. gentleness towards women. He had probably built up a formula for getting women to like him. Plenty of women approached him using various seductive tricks to try to win his favor. Rudolf probably enjoyed that more than anyone. Since the beginning, love had been a game to Rudolf. He never thought of it as a trial and error process to find a single life partner. He would intentionally spark jealousy between women and revel in the harem, lapping up their flirting. He may be my father, but he was an awful man.
でも
But at the same time, Dad must have looked down on those toadying girls.
そんな中に
Mom, who had their own set of values and was extremely intelligent, must have stood out.
それすらも
Though even that might have been due to the skillful way Kiria tried to catch Rudolf's gaze.
かもね
Yeah, maybe.
お母さんは
Mom was smart in many ways. Like the other Ushiromi siblings, Rudolf had strong ambitions and lofty goals. Under the mottos of who dares win and it's not a crime if you don't get caught, he would have set up businesses that were borderline swindles or bending the law, then bail out on them and repeat the process over and over. Apparently he was already making use of that talent in his college years, cleverly making money by thinking up shameless projects and selling cheap tickets to party for them. And so much money that he could brag about his wallet was always... Una porca di quella puttana. So much money that he could brag about how his wallet was always stuffed with 110,000 yen notes. Mamma mia, faceva gli scam. Many women fell for his charisma in being the man responsible for these radical projects, as well as its thick wallet and generosity. It would be a lie to say that Kiria was not one of them. However, what made Kiria very different from the other women was that she could also support Rudolf as a business partner. Rudolf would laugh all the way to the bank as his large-scale party succeeded. His female entourage would surround him, and Kiria would be the only one among them able to calmly point out several ways that income and expenditure could be improved upon, and even lay out a proposal for the next project.
そうして
In that manner, Rudolf must have slowly begun to accept her as a partner. E minchia, però aspetta.
男子厨房に入るべからずっていう
Però
ように
aspetta un attimo. Cioè vuol dire che Kiri era lì da un sacco di tempo. Faceva parte del suo harem entourage ai tempi del college. Cioè, qua non viene fatta nessuna menzione di Asumu. Andiamo avanti. Just like some people say men don't belong in the kitchen, there's also a sense that women should stay out of financial affairs.
女はおごられて当たり前
It's normal for women to be treated by men.
男の出す1万円札をどう
The,
やって捻出
the
している
details
か
of
は
how 10,000 yen notes were scrambled up are vulgar, so they don't ask, don't know, and don't even care.
キリエは金に対する価値
So
観
you're
が
saying that
男性
Kirie
的であっ
viewed
て
money from a man's perspective. In that regard, Rudolf noticed something unique about Kirie. He knew all about how much hard work it took to make just one of those 10,000 yen notes. So, somewhere inside him, he looked down upon those extravagant women who never even considered the efforts he had undertaken. Among all of them, only Kirie possessed the same sharp financial intuition as Rudolf. Every time Rudolf thought of a new plan, he would talk to Kirie about it, work out the kinks, and make it succeed. In this way, Kirie steadily worked her way up until she was the number one of Rudolf's large group of followers.
でもお母さんだって
But
女
Mom was still a
他の
woman.
女たち
I
に
doubt
ちやほやされ
she
てるお
enjoyed
父さんを
seeing
見て
Dad pampered by
心が
all
安
the
らい
other
でたかどう
girls.
かは疑わしい
ナンバーワンより
So she would rather have been his only one instead of his number one.
そういうこと
Yeah.
お母さんは
Though she served as Dad's right hand, she slyly got rid of the other women in the
他の女
shadows.
性を切り離していったわお母さんの恋
It
の
was only a
成就は
matter of time before Mom would succeed in her love.
アスムは
Ecco, when did Asumu come into the picture? Quello di cui stavamo parlando.
ルドルフさんの取
She
り巻きの
was one of those who swarmed around Rudolph-san.
いえ
No,
取
not
り巻い
even
てさ
that.
えいなかったただのファンの一
She
人だ
was just one of his fans.
話したことは
Did you ever talk with her?
もちろん
Of course.
私は彼
I
女
knew
の
her
ことをよ
well.
く知ってるわルドルフさんは
Ever since the very beginning, before Rudolph-san even knew her name.
あの子も
I'm sure she was quite intelligent herself. Ah,
狡猾
capito.
だ
And cunning.
私は
I tried to use my intelligence to stick out, but she took the exact opposite approach. Huh.
頭の
By her stupidity? Abbiamo capito da dove arriva Butler. Scherzo, scherzo.
非語欲の
I mean, she was good at triggering his protective
こ
instinct.
びてイチャついて
Out
く
of
る
all
女
the
たち
girls who
の中
came
で
to flatter and flirt with
彼女
him,
の仕草
only
に
she
一つ一つ
stood
は
out with every action she
派
made,
手な女たちの
unlike
象
the
徴を起こ
flashy
していた
girls Rudolph-san had
ルドルフさんが
tired
目立って
of.
見える
Even now, Kiria recognized the mistake she had made in letting Asumu and Rudolph get too close. Kiria thought that by taking her role of his business partner, she had succeeded in making him entirely hers. She might have been a little conceited, and her arrogance in trying to eliminate the relationships to the other girls had that the other girls had with Rudolph might also have contributed. Perhaps she sometimes tried too hard as a business partner, putting too much pressure on him, regardless of the fact that he was justified. Bit by bit, Rudolph started to need a woman who could stay quiet and soothe him, without making him think about anything complicated. That woman was Asumu.
私は
I am ruthless and intellectual, rational and economical. In a plank of Carnadee's situation, I would push the other person off without hesitation.
そんなパートナーが
I thought that was the kind of partner suitable for him. However, though that ruthlessness had made her reliable on the business side of things, outside of business he might have disturbed Rudolph deeply. E lei aveva le palle più grosse di Rudolph, praticamente. At some point, though Rudolph still acknowledged Kiria's skill, he began to yearn for a quiet, warm acceptance. È troppo per lui, non ce la fa. Letteralmente Kiria è col cazzo più grosso di Rudolph e ha bisogno non ce la fa di stare in sua presenza. Asumu filled that role completely. She would never talk about anything complicated, even if he did, she would just shake her head to say she didn't know. However, she would care more for him physically than anyone else, quietly putting a blanket on him and staying by his side until morning. Sì, sicuro, Micino, sicuro.
ビジネスのパートナーの座を手に
Yes, I did get the position of his business partner, but before I knew it, Rudolph-san had grown a need for a mental partner, someone who could heal his heart.
私は愚かしくも知的を
Foolishly
自称
enough,
しながら
despite claiming to be the intellectual one, I never noticed.
それで
And then,
ルドルフおじさんは
Uncle
ア
Rudolph
スムおばさんと
married
結婚
Aunt Asumu?
ええ
Yes,
そうよ
that's
取ら
right.
れた
She stole him away from me.
たくさんの女をはべらして
He had slept with a lot of women. By that point, he wasn't the kind of guy to let his emotion be captured by a woman just because he slept with her.
それにあの人にとって
After all, sleeping with women just was a game for him.
だからこそ私は
That's why I used something other than my body
自
to
分の
attract his
存在を
attention.
示して
Furba.
慢心だな
Conceit.
女として
A woman downfall.
間もなく二人は対面す
Before
る
long, they were both pregnant. Questa cosa la sapevamo già? Chiedo a voi perché io potrei avere i ricordi confusi. Sapevamo già che erano entrambi. Ok, allora lo sapevamo già. Non c'è bisogno di teorizzare allora.
アスムさんは
Asumu-san told dad about it right away, but mom did the
お母さん
opposite.
の役だった身重になること
She
が
must have been afraid that pregnancy would threaten her position as his business partner.
恐れたのだな当時のお母さんは
Apparently, mom wasn't eating much at the time and was often out of sorts.
だから 解任に気づくのも
Because of
随分
that, it took a really long time before she realized she was pregnant.
気づいたのも
When did she notice?
アスムさんとお
It
父さ
was
んが
after
電
Asumo's
撃
son
入籍
suddenly
をして
moved
から
into Dad's family
お
register.
母さんは
Mom
その
learned
後
about
に
her
妊娠をして
pregnancy after that and
アスム
plotted
さんの
several
お父さんを
times
揺
to
さぶろう
split
と
Asumu-san
随
and
分
Dad
暗躍したみたいだけど
apart, but
アスムさん
even though Asumu-san always appeared to be so
ルド
absent-minded,
ルフさんを加え込んだ
once she got her hands on Rudolph-san, she wouldn't let go.
だから何ですか
What do you
どう
want?
ぞお
Please
一人
stay
ください
out of our way, she said.
バス一つ乗りも
And this coming from that sissy little girl who curled up into a ball every time she got onto a bus.
あの時悟ったわ
At that point I realized
本当に高価
she had been the truly cunning one.
そうよ
Yes. Even her fear of vehicles was another lie to catch Rudolph-san's sympathy. Huh, è un po' stronza, eh?
ごめんなさい
My
こんな
apologies.
話を聞いて
It
も
must be
つまんない
boring for you. I must be boring you. No,
せめて
at the very least,
私の
I
産む子
wanted
だけ
him
で
to
も認知
register
させて
himself as the father of my child.
ルドルフさん
And
もそのつもり
it
は
does seem as though Rudolph-san was prepared to do that.
病院もきっちり手配して
He
くれ
made
たし
sure that
アスムさんの出産が
he
近
made
づいて
sure
も
that there was a hospital waiting for me, and even though Asumu-san was close to giving birth herself, he gallantly came to see me,
もはや向こうが
even
本当
though
の
she
奥
was
さん
already his wife.
ひどい人だわ
What an awful man, really. Sì, ma questo lo sapevamo già, Andrew. Mi sembrava che avessero già fatto la battutina che è da lei che ha preso la paura del cadere. After that, this is a tale I can't bear even to tell. Both Asumu and I had the same delivery date, and yet her pregnancy led to marriage, while mine was completely meaningless. I swore to bring up my child well, so that Rudolph-san would be proud to call himself its father. Asumu-san had won her battle against me, however I hadn't yet lost the war. If I could make my child excel far more than Asumu-san's, if I could make my child the one that Rudolph-san most respected, I would be rewarded. That's what I believed.
しかし
However,
キリエの
Kirya's
子は
child was
死産
stillborn.
ええ
Yeah.
アスムさんには
Asumu-san
お兄ちゃん
gave
が
birth to
し
Onichan,
かし
but mom
お母さん
didn't
が
give birth to anyone.
お母さんの
Even mom's
せめて
final
第二夫
hope
人
of
の座
being
に残り
left
たい
a
という
spot as
最後の
Dad's
希望
second
は
wife was
絶たれ
destroyed.
た
He had fallen from his partners to his second wife, and then, unable to give birth to the bond of a child, she tumbled down to merely his mistress. I can't imagine how much she must have hated Asumu and her child, Butler.
そんなのをお首に
But
も出さず
despite
お
that,
母さんは
Mom was able to act in a very friendly way towards
シ
Onichan.
ョックだった
It was definitely a shock for me
あの優しい
to
お母さん
discover
は
that my kind and gentle mother had held such negative emotions towards Onichan
それ
and
を隠
managed
し
to
おせて
hide
た
them.
なんて
憎かったで
She
ある
must have despised
バ
Butler.
でしょうね
I don't
も
I
し
don't
死産
doubt it.
がアスムさんで
If Asumu-san's child had been stillborn and Mom had been the one to give birth to Onichan, history might have changed in some way.
もしもそうだったな
It
ら
seems she thought it would, if that would have happened, she might have been able to make things play out in a way that Dad would divorce Asumu-san and marry her instead.
それも
Was
随
that
想録
also written in that book where she kept her thoughts?
ええ
Yeah.
だからこそそれ
It
は
truly was a collection of random thoughts,
涙
fantasies.
で濡らしたシー
Mom's
ツの足を噛み
resentment
なが
as
ら
she
に
chewed on the corner of her tear-stained bed sheets. Vogliamo parlare un po' di...
後悔は一点だけ
There's just one thing I regret.
解任
You
です
mean
か
the pregnancy?
違う違う
No, no.
私のおごりだ
It's my arrogance I regret.
ルドルフさんはもう
Rudolph's
私の
son
もの
is
だから
already mine, so I'm
絶対安
completely
全
safe.
あんなアスム
I'll
に
never
小
lose
娘
to
に
that
負けるわけ
Asumu
ない
girl.
彼女がバスや
While
飛
she
行
was
機でギャーギャ
screaming
ー
and
わめく
shrieking on buses and planes, I
私はその
was
手配で
capable of
経費を
probably
適正に
managing the
処理で
travel
きた
arrangements and expenditures.
だから私は
And
一
so
番
I was
ル
overly
ドルフさんに
confident
信頼されている
that
と
I was the one Rudolph's son trusted the most.
恋って
They say love needs to be nurtured, right? Yeah. That's not wrong. You both need to water that tree, care for it, and nurture it. And at the end, you will finally bear the fruit called love. Did you know? It isn't over when it bears fruit. You have to harvest that love, or it will never be realized.
収穫って
Harvest? Harvest? You need to think about that yourself, Jessica-chan. If you make the tree bear fruit without harvesting it, it can sometimes grow rotten, and bugs will often gather around it. In fact, sometimes thieves will come by and pluck it off the branch. Young kids like you, Jessica-chan, think that love ends with nurturing. That's naive. If you don't harvest it, you will never be rewarded for that love.
愛を
Harvest love. At a glance, it may seem to be a matter just for the pair of lovers, but that isn't true. Putting off the harvest because you assume you can do it at any time just gives the thieves a chance. What if the fruit you've worked so hard to nurture gets pulled off by the branch the next morning? You'll regret that you didn't choose to harvest it the previous day instead of putting it off. That regret really hurts. It'll make you crawl through hell. I was lucky. My hell ended after 18 years. So I'll never misjudge myself again. That man is mine. I won't let him get away. I won't let him out of my sight. And I'm grateful to my masters for giving me that chance. My absolute certain willpower is not giving up on that man, no matter what was answered with a miracle. By now, Jessica was speechless and didn't even nod her head in understanding. This true form of love that Kiria was telling about was far, far more harsh than anything she had imagined. Now, I will do anything to keep Rudolph-san by my side, and I will show no mercy to his enemies. If he wished it, he might not even hesitate to commit... If he wished it, I might not even hesitate to commit murder. Because I finally gained that determination on the 18th year. That absolute willpower brought about a miracle for me. You know, miracles only come to those who can take them, who can make them through themselves. Azumo's death was no murder. However, Kiria had often cursed her and hoped for her death, and finally on the 18th year she built up the determination to kill her with her own hands. And then she actually got herself a knife with which to do the deed. That was when the miracle occurred.
アスムおばさんが亡くなったことが
And Azumo passing away was a miracle? Not really. That wasn't even close to a miracle. After all, if she hadn't died, I would have killed her. In other words, she was fated to die no matter what. The miracle was that even though she did die, I didn't have to get my hands dirty. That's all. Porca puttana, io mi ero completamente dimenticato sta cosa. Completamente dimenticato sta cosa. Porca puttana, Kirie, aiuto. Alzo le mani, ti prego non ammazzarmi, please. Noi, vabbè, sapevamo che era sempre stata quella più intelligente, più determinata, più fuori come un balcone. Cioè, dovevamo averlo un po' capito in episodio 3 quando ho fatto quel discorso, però... Alzo le mani, Dio madonna, mi sto cagando sotto. Until now, Kiria had never shown Jessica, no, she had never shown Rudolph that glint in the deepest depths of her eyes. It told plainly and clearly that romance and love are not the sweet and fluffy candies that young girls imagine them to be. Jessica was overwhelmed by that pressure and stunned silently. And she had to acknowledge it. This was the power of will that could make love be realized. This was the level of willpower Kyrie showed in her support of Rudolph and his wife. As his wife. It was the same for George. He already had the willpower to confront everything in the way of his love that transcended status, and he had already proven that. Now, Jessica could clearly understand. This was the magnitude of George's determination, which had allowed him to coldly carry out this part of the demon trial. Then, what about her? Did she really have the resolve to make her love with canon bear fruit, and to go through the task of harvesting it? I'm sorry. I only meant to give a little advice, but perhaps I scared you a little too much. Blame the weather. I just wanted to pressure you a bit, but I've gone overboard. Kyrie let a relaxed smile rise to her face. The tense atmosphere finally slackened. However, her words had been gouged into Jessica's heart. I don't know what your love has been like, Jessica-chan, but if you have a rival and neither is willing to back down, you can't let yourself become complacent. If you do, you'll end up like me. Every woman should have one time in her life when she would kill for the sake of love. Sono sicurissimo sia una cosa elfi, Kyrie. I can tell you that all women in the world who can call themselves mother have been through that. After all, women who don't do that are chewed to bits by the others and forced to crawl through hell of envy and regret for the rest of their lives. My hell lasted 18 years. I was lucky to be pardoned after just 18. That hell is still filled with women who will never get out until they die. Unless they execute themselves in their regret. Wow, I have no words. I was just trying to spur you on, but you'd have gone and frightened you too much. I'm truly sorry. Love can be much more easygoing than that, okay? Love really is like playing with fire. Anyone can play easy and light-hearted, but when you mess up and get burned, the scars stay with you your whole life. Tira fuori un coltello. Regrets in love will never fade. That was all that Kyrie had been trying to communicate. It wasn't like Kyrie to tell her life story instead of just saying something like that directly. In fact, her past was a topic she usually avoided. However, Kyrie might have felt as though Jessica deserved to hear. Jessica had timidly brought up the subject of love. Perhaps Kyrie had opened up and told everything because she had seen the fires of Jessica's determination in her eyes. Well, I better head back. Let's keep what we've talked about a secret, okay? With a mysterious smile on her face, Kyrie turned around. I wonder if I scared her too much. Still, it's 100 times better to learn of that hell from a warning. Once you've fallen into it, it's already too late. Good luck, Jessica-chan. Your love sounds like a handful, but don't let yourself be beaten. It's not every day I get to act as a mentor. What is it, Jessica-chan? Eccola! A windstorm grazed Kyrie's head. It had missed by a hair. E ci lasciamo qui. Devo andare, sono già le 4 passate. Volevo fermarmi in questo momento.